At precisely 5:47 a.m., I stood frozen in my dark kitchen, gripping a half-filled coffee mug and staring at my security monitor. There she was again, barefoot in a teal tracksuit with glow getter sparkling across her hoodie, sneaking into my yard like a sugar-craving squirrel. She didn't hesitate. She marched to my honey table, snatched 2 freshly sealed jars from the crate, and slipped away as if she were doing me a favor. This was the 3rd morning in a row. My jaw tightened, and coffee spilled onto the counter. That was my honey bees, my stings, my pride. And Linda just strutted off, licking her fingers without a thank you. 3 years ago, when I moved to Maplewood Grove, I thought it'd be peaceful. I set up a small garden, installed rain barrels, and started beekeeping as a hobby. The hive thrived, and I shared free honey with neighbors that first season. Linda was polite back then, with a fake smile that left you unsure if she was praising your roses or mocking your shoes. I didn't care until my jars started vanishing. At first, I blamed myself, maybe I'd given away too many. But then I noticed sticky rings and crates shifted slightly. Notes appeared in loopy handwriting. "Thanks, neighbor," or "better than store-bought." I installed a camera and caught Linda red-handed. I confronted her calmly, showing a screenshot of her grabbing a jar. She scoffed, mumbling about community sharing and how natural resources like honey should be free. Then she stormed off to yell at a delivery driver. The next day, she brought an HOA pamphlet, highlighting a line about neighborhood harmony and claiming my bees' honey was communal since they pollinated everyone's flowers. I was stunned, but the real blow came at her book club. While I trimmed hedges, I overheard her tell the HOA ladies, "That guy with the bees. He's just a lonely wannabe artisan who probably talks to them like pets." Their laughter stung worse than any bee. This wasn't just about honey anymore. It was about the hours I spent tending the hive, protecting the bees, and nurturing the queen. It was personal. That night, I couldn't sleep, replaying the footage in my mind. I imagined her opening her door to find my hive waiting like an army in yellow stripes. By morning, I had a wild plan. After sunset, in my beekeeping suit, I gently moved the hive into a disguised planter box, wheeled it to Linda's porch, and placed it near her yoga spot. I added 2 honey jars labeled Fresh Harvest, Enjoy, and sprinkled lavender and pollen for the bees. It was poetic. At 5:24 a.m., I sipped coffee by the window. At 5:45, Linda's door creaked open. She yawned, reached for the jars, and froze as a bee buzzed past her ear. Another zipped by her cheek. A third landed on her ankle. Chaos erupted. She screamed, dropped a jar, kicked over her table, and fled inside, toppling her plant stand. Her dog, Daisy, barked wildly. I nearly choked laughing. She wanted the sweet life she got the hive. The next morning, Linda's porch was a no-fly zone. The bees settled in, buzzing around her flower boxes like they owned them. Her garden, which she'd once called a victim of my bees, was now their buffet. Her curtains twitched as she peeked out, too scared to do yoga. By noon, HOA members Tom and Rachel knocked, claiming Linda reported a malicious beehive. I showed them my empty hive base and city permit. When they asked if I moved the hive, I shrugged and said bees choose their homes. Tom muttered about swarms. Rachel glared but left. The next day, a delivery driver fled Linda's porch after bees buzzed him. She barely opened her door to grab the package. Poetic justice tasted like wildflower honey. That evening, my niece, Mia, heard the story and, without asking, edited the footage into a TikTok clip with dramatic music and captions like entitled Neighbor versus Bee Brigade. By morning, it had 1 million views. Comments called for a movie. Memes dubbed Linda Honey Thief. I was torn between laughter and panic, but the support felt good. Linda didn't laugh. She banged on my door, accusing me of a bee attack and threatening her lawyer sister. I sipped tea and said, I didn't know bees followed HOA rules. She tripped on a sprinkler and left fuming. That evening, a local news station called about a Bees and Justice segment. I agreed, staying anonymous. They filmed me in my bee suit, and the aired story boosted honey orders. I labeled jars Buzz of Justice and sold out instantly. Linda's porch now had signs, Be Caution, Do Not Approach, and a sticker on her mailbox reading Honey Thief Haven. The saga grew wilder. Linda's sister, Brenda, arrived, parking her SUV across 2 driveways and yelling about biological harassment. She called my permits fake and contacted animal control, who confirmed I was legal. The neighborhood split. Team B brought me cookies. Team Chaos, led by Linda and Brenda, whined. One day, my security pinged. Linda, wrapped in layers, kicked my backup hive. Bees swarmed. She fell into my tomatoes and fled. I called an ambulance to avoid a lawsuit. Paramedics treated her minor stings, and I sent the footage to police. Linda got a trespassing warning. Then, Linda tried one last stunt. At dusk, I caught her prying open another hive with a hoe, dressed in a mosquito net. Bees erupted. She tripped, screamed she was allergic. She wasn't, and ran. I calmed the hive and sent the footage to police. This time, it was criminal trespassing and agricultural sabotage. Linda was summoned, and Brenda's rescue excuses flopped. Neighbors recorded the drama. T-shirts of Linda fleeing bees sold out. In court, Linda's hat and sunglasses didn't help. The judge watched the footage, unimpressed by her emotional damage claims. She got 40 hours of community service, a fine, and a trespassing order. 2 weeks later, I saw her pulling weeds at the community garden while I taught kids about bees. She avoided eye contact as kids called me Bee Guy. Linda's porch kept the hive, now in a sleek enclosure with an educational plaque. Tourists snapped photos, and someone planted lavender nearby. Linda stayed quiet, sometimes sitting near the hive, unbothered. One day, a bag on my porch held a jar labeled Porch Batch 1. No note, just her silent apology. I kept it unopened. Daisy, her dog, started napping near the hive. Once, Linda caught her, nodded at me, and said, "She likes the sound." I said the bees liked her too. The fence between us faded. The honey war became a story of growth. My hobby turned me into Justice Beekeeper, with a thriving online store selling karma jars. The HOA reformed, led by a bee-loving retiree. The neighborhood bonded, and kids learned to save bees. One morning, sipping tea, I watched the hive glow in the sun. A letter from Linda admitted her wrongs and included a check for repairs. She hoped the bees forgave her. They buzzed peacefully, maybe they had. The buzz of justice wasn't the sting, it was the hum of balance restored. Maplewood Grove felt whole again.